It was 2:14 a.m. when I found out my wife had been sleeping with another man for 5 years. I wasn't looking for it. That's the thing people never understand when I tell this story. I wasn't some paranoid husband checking her phone every time she went to the bathroom. I trusted Vanessa completely. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never once questioned where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. If she said she was at a conference in Barcelona, she was at a conference in Barcelona. That night, I was sitting in my home office, unable to sleep. A hostile acquisition was eating my brain alive. Commercial real estate, a strip mall development in Jersey that was turning into a knife fight. The family iPad was on my desk. We'd shared it for years, used it for recipes, streaming, random browsing. Her WhatsApp was logged in, which wasn't unusual. We didn't have secrets. I was scrolling mindlessly, looking for something to distract me from the Jersey deal, when I noticed something strange. A conversation entirely in Italian. I stopped scrolling. Vanessa speaks French and Spanish. Has to, for her translation work. In 12 years, she'd never mentioned Italian. Not once. No Italian classes, no Italian colleagues, no Italian anything. I stared at the screen. A reasonable man would have closed the app, gone to bed, asked her about it in the morning over coffee. But something made me open the conversation instead. I copied the most recent message into Google Translate. Just curious, I told myself. Just wondering what project she was working on. I count the days until Barcelona. My body aches for you. These months between us are torture. The world stopped. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. The words didn't change. They sat there on my screen, glowing in the dark room, patient and brutal. Something happened to me in that moment. I've tried to describe it to my therapist, to my sister, to myself in the quiet hours of the night, and the best I can manage is this. It felt like someone reached into my chest and flipped a switch. Everything that made me Dylan Mercer, the emotions, the vulnerability, the softness I'd cultivated in 12 years of marriage, just shut off. Click. Gone. What came online was something else entirely. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the iPad across the room. I didn't storm into our bedroom and shake Vanessa awake and demand explanations. Instead, I started reading. Every single message. Methodically. Carefully. I screenshotted everything. Learned early in my career that documentation is everything. I created a timeline in a Word document, cross-referencing dates with her work calendar, which synced to the family iPad. The messages went back years. 5 years. 1,847 days to be precise. His name was Luca Benedetti. 45 years old, Italian, a translator based in Milan. They'd met at a conference in Rome 5 years ago. In those early messages, she called him intriguing and magnetic, and unlike anyone I've ever met. She'd never called me any of those things. They'd met 15 times since that first conference, always during her European work trips. The messages were explicit, passionate, longing. They made plans. They reminisced about past encounters. They counted down the days until the next one. I found messages where she complained about me, about our boring routine, about how I worked too much, about how I didn't understand her need for adventure and passion. In one message, dated 18 months ago, she wrote, "Sometimes I think you're the only real thing in my life. Dylan is just the background." Background. 12 years of marriage. Background. By 5 a.m., I knew everything. The timeline, the locations, the hotels they'd stayed in, the lies she'd told me to cover each trip. I had it all documented in a 47-page Word file. The sun came up slowly, painting the walls of my office in shades of pink and gold. I watched the light change, and I thought about what I'd learned. 5 years. That was longer than most affairs. Most people got caught within the first year. A stray text, a suspicious credit card charge, a friend who saw something they shouldn't have. But Vanessa had maintained this double life for half a decade. She'd refined her technique, perfected her lies, built an entire shadow existence that ran parallel to our marriage. I thought about all the times she'd come home from her conferences. The way she'd hug me a little too tight, tell me she missed me a little too enthusiastically. I'd thought it was love. It was guilt. I thought about the times she'd been distant, distracted, checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I'd attributed it to work stress. It was him. I thought about her insistence on joint finances, her reluctance to have children, her constant need for independence. I'd thought we were building a partnership of equals. She was keeping her options open. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. Here's the thing about discovering infidelity. There's the initial shock, the gut punch moment when you first see the evidence. But then there's a second wave, the reconstruction phase, where you go back through your entire history together and realize you were living in a false reality. Every memory becomes suspect. Every moment of happiness is tainted by the knowledge that she was probably thinking about him. Our 10th anniversary trip to Paris. Had she been messaging him the whole time? The romantic dinner she'd surprised me with last year. Was she feeling guilty about something? The way she'd started exercising more intensely 6 months ago. Was she trying to look good for him? I sat in my office chair as the sun rose higher, and I felt something cold and calculated settle into my chest like concrete setting. Here's what people need to understand about me. I'm a commercial real estate attorney. I specialize in hostile acquisitions. I dismantle companies for a living, find their weaknesses, exploit their vulnerabilities, strip away the facades until there's nothing left but what my clients want. I'm very, very good at my job. And sitting there at 5 a.m. watching my wife sleep peacefully in the next room after 5 years of betrayal, I realized I'd just found the most important hostile acquisition of my life. Vanessa's flight landed at JFK at 4:47 p.m., 3 days after my discovery. 3 days of pretending everything was normal. 3 days of smiling at her good morning texts, of responding to her check-in calls, of maintaining the facade of a happy marriage. I was waiting at arrivals with flowers, pink roses, her favorite. "Baby!" She dropped her carry-on and threw her arms around me. She smelled like airplane and expensive perfume I didn't recognize. "You didn't have to come all the way out here." "Wanted to surprise you." I kissed her forehead. "How was Barcelona?" "Exhausting. You know how these conferences are?" She took the flowers, buried her nose in them. "These are beautiful. You're too sweet." "Anything for you." In the car, she chattered about her trip. The keynote speaker who'd bombed, some German academic with a monotone delivery. The networking dinner where her colleague Sandra had gotten tipsy and flirted with a waiter. The panel she'd moderated on simultaneous interpretation techniques. She had details, anecdotes, names and places and specific moments. She'd been rehearsing this performance for 5 years. She was flawless. "I missed you," she said, putting her hand on my thigh as I drove. 4 days felt like forever. "Missed you too." "Did you eat anything other than takeout while I was gone?" "I managed," she laughed. The same laugh I'd fallen in love with in law school, bright and genuine and infectious. Except it wasn't genuine. It was theater. That night, after dinner, she initiated intimacy. She came out of the bathroom in something silky and new. "Purchased in Barcelona," she said. For him, I knew. "I've been thinking about you all week," she murmured, pressing against me. "I'm exhausted, babe. The Jersey deal is killing me." I kissed her forehead. "Rain check?" She pulled back. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Annoyance, maybe, or suspicion. It was gone before I could identify it. "Fine," she said. "But you owe me. I always pay my debts." She fell asleep facing away from me. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, running calculations. 12 years of marriage. No children. She'd said she wasn't ready, kept postponing year after year. I understood now. She didn't want to be tied down. Our finances were joint. She'd insisted on it during our 3rd year of marriage. Separate accounts are a sign of distrust, she'd said. I want us to be partners, real partners. I'd thought it was romantic. Now I understood it was strategic. It gave her access to everything. The house was worth $1.2 million. My parents had gifted us $400,000 for the down payment, documented, thankfully, with a letter confirming it was a gift to me specifically. I'd been paying 70% of the mortgage because I earned significantly more. I lay there until 4 a.m. planning. When I finally slept, I dreamed of nothing. 1 week after discovery, I walked into the offices of Lawson and Associates and sat down across from Patricia Lawson. I'd chosen her carefully. She wasn't affiliated with my firm. No potential conflicts. She had a reputation as the most ruthless divorce attorney in the tri-state area. Her nickname in legal circles was the Terminator, which should tell you everything. She was mid-50s, silver hair cut sharp, eyes like a hawk tracking prey. Mr. Mercer. She shook my hand, firm, businesslike. Your assistant said it was urgent. It is. I slid my 47-page document across her desk. My wife has been having an affair for 5 years. I have complete documentation. She didn't react. Just opened the folder and started reading. I watched her flip through the pages. The timeline, the screenshots, the cross-references with Vanessa's work calendar. After 15 minutes, she looked up. This is thorough. I'm an attorney. I know how to document. You haven't confronted her? No. She doesn't know you know? No. Patricia sat back in her chair, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Most men in your position would have blown up by now, thrown her out, made a scene. Then they'd be playing defense in divorce proceedings, emotional distress, temporary insanity, all the things opposing counsel uses to paint the betrayed spouse as unstable. I don't play defense. I can see that. She pulled out a legal pad. Tell me about your finances. I told her everything. The house, the down payment gift, the mortgage split, the joint accounts. She took notes without interrupting. What about her career? She asked. International business translator, specializes in conference interpretation. She travels to Europe 4 or 5 times a year. For legitimate conferences? Allegedly. I haven't verified them yet. Patricia looked up from her notes. Mr. Mercer, your state has at-fault divorce provisions. Documented adultery significantly affects alimony determinations. With evidence this comprehensive, you're looking at a very favorable settlement. I'm not interested in favorable. I'm interested in comprehensive. Define comprehensive. I leaned forward. She's been lying about these conferences for 5 years. She's been spending our joint money on flights, hotels, gifts for him. I want to know how much. I want to know if her company knows she's been fabricating work trips. I want to know everything about this man she's been sleeping with. And then? Then I want to dismantle her entire life, the same way I dismantle companies for my clients. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Not a nice smile, not a comforting smile. A shark's smile. Have you considered whether he's married? I blinked. The thought hadn't occurred to me. A man that age, Patricia continued, established career, international circles, they usually are. I felt something click in my brain. Another angle, another vulnerability. If he's married, I said slowly, then his wife deserves to know. She certainly does. And if you wanted to coordinate with her, strike at the same time from different directions. Patricia spread her hands. The devastation would be considerable. I stood up. I need an investigator, Someone good, someone discreet. I know just the person. She wrote a name on a card. Raymond Costa, ex-FBI. He's expensive, but he's worth it. Money isn't an issue. With what I'm seeing in these documents, I didn't think it would be. She handed me the card. Mr. Mercer, I take on a lot of divorce cases. Cheating husbands, cheating wives, messy custody battles. Most of them are emotional train wrecks. And mine? Yours is going to be surgical. She shook my hand again. I think we're going to work very well together. Raymond Costa operated out of a small office in Brooklyn, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. He was 62, salt and pepper hair, forgettable face, which I assumed was intentional. You're the attorney from Patricia's referral, he said when I sat down. Dylan Mercer. She gave me the basics. Cheating wife, 5-year affair, Italian lover. He opened a notebook. What do you need? Everything. I want to know who this man is. His background, his family, his finances. I want to know if my wife is actually attending these conferences or just using them as cover. I want documentation of every dollar she spent on this affair. That's a lot of work. I'll pay whatever it costs. Raymond studied me for a moment. Most men in your situation, they're emotional wrecks. Crying in my office, can't think straight. You're not. No. Why not? I considered the question. Because I've already processed the grief. What's left is strategy. Raymond nodded slowly. I've been doing this for 30 years, Mr. Mercer. I've seen a lot of betrayed spouses. The ones who come to me cold and calculated like you. They're either sociopaths or they're people who've decided to channel their pain into action. Which do you think I am? I think you're a man who doesn't like losing, and you've decided you're not going to. He flipped open his notebook. Let's start with the target. Luca Benedetti. What do you know? I told him what I'd gleaned from the messages. Milan-based, translator, mid-40s, possibly married. Give me 2 weeks, Raymond said. I'll have everything you need. During those 2 weeks of waiting, I became an actor in my own life. Every morning I woke up next to Vanessa, watched her stretch and yawn and reach for her phone to check her messages. Every morning I kissed her goodbye and told her to have a good day. Every evening I asked about her work and nodded along to stories about colleagues and projects and office politics. I noticed things now that I'd never noticed before. The way she angled her phone slightly away from me when texting. The way she sometimes smiled at her screen. A private smile, soft and secret, before quickly composing her face. The way she'd mention upcoming conferences with just a little too much enthusiasm. The Vienna conference is going to be incredible, she said one night over dinner. 3 full days of workshops. I might even stay an extra day to do some sightseeing. That sounds nice. When is it again? 6 weeks. I already submitted my vacation request. 6 weeks. She was already planning, already counting down. I smiled and refilled her wine glass and thought about how different her world would look in 6 weeks. I also noticed how careless she'd become. 5 years of successful deception had made her confident. She left her laptop open. She didn't log out of apps. She took phone calls in the next room, speaking in hushed French that she assumed I didn't understand. I understood enough. One night, I heard her say his name. Luca. Whispered through the bedroom door, soft and intimate. I sat in the living room, pretending to watch television, and I felt nothing. 2 weeks later, Raymond slid a thick folder across my desk. We were meeting at my office after hours, safer that way. Luca Benedetti, he began. 45 years old, based in Milan. Runs a small translation firm, specializing in legal and business documents. The firm's been struggling for years. He's barely breaking even. So he's not wealthy. Not even close. His wife, on the other hand. Raymond flipped to a photograph of a striking Italian woman. Dark hair, sharp features. Giulia Benedetti. pediatric oncologist at San Rafael Hospital, one of the top children's cancer specialists in northern Italy. She's the breadwinner. By a mile. She bought their apartment before they married. It's in her name. They have 2 daughters, 16 and 14. Raymond paused. 20 years of marriage. I stared at the photograph. This woman, this doctor who spent her days saving children's lives, had been betrayed just as thoroughly as I had. What else? Your wife's expense reports. Raymond pulled out another stack of documents. I have a contact who was able to access her company's records. Over the past 5 years, she's submitted approximately $47,000 in fraudulent reimbursements. Fraudulent how? Fake conference registrations, fabricated receipts. 2 of the conferences she claimed to attend didn't exist at all. I verified with the organizing bodies. The others, she attended for 1 day, maybe 2, then disappeared. Her hotel records show she checked into different hotels than the ones she expensed. That's embezzlement. That's embezzlement, Raymond agreed. Her company could press charges if they wanted. I let that sink in. $47,000 stolen from her employer. A crime. What about the second phone? She has a burner, prepaid, cash purchase. She keeps it in her gym bag. I had my team track the purchase history. She's been replacing it every 6 months, presumably to avoid detection. Have you seen it? No, but if you can get access. That night, while Vanessa was in the shower, I found it. Cheap Samsung, hidden in the inner pocket of her gym bag. 1 contact. LC. 347 messages in the current phone alone. I didn't take it. I didn't need to. I photographed everything, then put it back exactly where I'd found it. My sister Megan cornered me 3 weeks after discovery. Sunday dinner at our parents' house, a ritual we'd maintained since childhood. Vanessa was in the living room, laughing at something our father said. Megan caught me in the kitchen. What's wrong with you? She blocked the doorway, arms crossed. Nothing. Dylan, I'm an investigative journalist. I literally detect lies for a living. She lowered her voice. You've been weird for weeks. Distant. Checked out. Vanessa mentioned it too. She thinks you're stressed about work. Work's fine. Then what? I should have deflected, should have maintained the facade. But this was Megan, my little sister, my closest ally, the person who'd known me longer than anyone. Not here, I said quietly. Meet me at O'Brien's tomorrow, 8 p.m. She nodded, understanding the seriousness immediately. The next night, in a corner booth at a dive bar where no one would recognize us, I told her everything. The messages, the 5 years of lies, the timeline I'd constructed, the investigator, the plan. Megan listened without interrupting, her face getting harder with every word. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. That absolute... She stopped herself, took a breath. 5 years. She's been lying to you for 5 years. 1,847 days. And she's been using your money, your family's money, to fund it. Yes. Megan picked up her beer, put it down, picked it up again. What are you going to do? Destroy her. I expected pushback, caution. A suggestion that maybe I should think this through, consider reconciliation, try therapy. Instead, Megan said, Good. I thought you'd try to talk me down. Dylan, I watched you marry her. I stood at that altar and I thought, he's so happy. I've watched you for 12 years being the good husband, working yourself to exhaustion to provide for her, supporting her career, putting her needs first. She shook her head. And the whole time she's been treating you like... What did you say she called you? Background? Background. She doesn't deserve sympathy. She deserves exactly what you're planning. Megan leaned forward. You know I can't help you directly. Ethical issues, professional conflicts. I know. But I know people who know people. Forensic accountants, corporate investigators, people who can dig up things that shouldn't be found. She paused. And if you need anything, anything at all, I'm here. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thanks, Meg. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when that woman is watching her life burn down around her. 5 weeks after discovery, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to contact Giulia Benedetti. I agonized over it for days. This woman was innocent. She'd done nothing wrong except marry a man who turned out to be a liar. And I was about to shatter her world the same way mine had been shattered. But she deserved to know. If our positions were reversed, if some stranger had evidence that Vanessa was betraying me, I would want them to tell me. I wrote a letter. Not an email, a physical letter, handwritten, because I wanted her to understand that this was real. That a real person was reaching out to her with real evidence. I included copies of everything. The messages, translated into Italian by a professional service, not through Vanessa's company, obviously. The timeline. The hotel records Raymond had obtained. Photographs. At the end, I wrote, Mrs. Benedetti, I am the husband of Vanessa Mercer. I am writing to you because I believe we share a common situation. I discovered 3 weeks ago that my wife has been having an affair with your husband for 5 years. I have enclosed comprehensive documentation, including translated messages, photographs, and hotel records. I don't know what you'll do with this information. That is entirely your choice. But I believe you deserve to know the truth, as I did. If you wish to coordinate, if you want to ensure that they both face consequences simultaneously, I am willing. I have included a secure email address below. With respect, Dylan Mercer. I mailed it from a post office 2 towns over, using no return address. Then I waited. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Every time my burner email refreshed with nothing new, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Maybe she'd throw the letter away. Maybe she'd confront Luca and he'd somehow talk his way out of it. Maybe she'd contact Vanessa and warn her. But on the 4th day, my burner email received a message. Mr. Mercer. I suspected for years. I was too afraid to know. I searched his things, checked his accounts, but found nothing concrete. Your letter has given me what I lacked. Proof. Thank you for your courage in reaching out. Most people would protect themselves alone. You thought of a stranger across an ocean. My husband believes he has been clever. He does not know that I have been documenting his lies for 3 years. I simply never had proof of who. Now I do. I would like to coordinate. Luca will not escape this unscathed. Neither will your wife. Giulia. I read the email 4 times. Then I started planning. Over the next 5 weeks, Giulia and I exchanged emails almost daily. She was precise, clinical, utterly devoid of sentimentality. She wrote the way I imagined she operated, with surgical precision, removing what was diseased while preserving what could be saved. Tell me about your wife, she wrote in an early email. What kind of woman chooses to destroy 2 families for 5 years? I had to think about how to answer. How do you describe someone you thought you knew, someone you built a life with, only to discover they were a stranger all along? She's charming, I wrote. Intelligent, ambitious. The kind of woman who walks into a room and people notice. When I met her in law school, I thought I'd found my equal, someone as driven as I was, as focused. And now? Now I think she's someone who was never satisfied with what she had. She always wanted more. More excitement, more attention, more validation. I was comfortable, stable, safe. I wasn't enough. Giulia's response came hours later. Luca is the same. He tells everyone how lucky he is. Beautiful wife, wonderful daughters, good career. But he has always needed to be admired, desired. One woman was never enough, even when that woman was giving him everything. There was something cathartic about these exchanges. Julia and I were strangers, separated by an ocean, but we understood each other in a way no one else could. We'd been betrayed by the same lie, hurt by the same people. I have controlled our finances for the entirety of our marriage, she wrote in one email. Luca does not know that I discovered his secret credit card 3 years ago. He uses it for hotel rooms, gifts, dinners. I have statements going back 36 months. My investigator found similar patterns, I replied. Vanessa has been sending him money directly, approximately $15,000 over the past 2 years, from our joint account. 15,000 American dollars? Confirmed via bank records. She's been wiring it to a personal account in his name. There was a long pause before Julia's next message. He has been telling her his business is failing. This is true. He has been losing clients for years. Poor management. But he has also been using her money for things she does not know about. A necklace for our anniversary, earrings for my birthday, a weekend trip for the family. I sat back from my computer, stunned. Vanessa had been financing her own deception. She'd sent money to her lover, and he'd used it to buy presents for his wife. She has no idea, I typed. None, and she never will. I intend to keep those gifts. They were bought with her money. Let them serve as reminders of what she lost. I found myself smiling grimly. Julia Benedetti was not a woman to be trifled with. When do we move? I asked. 6 weeks. My daughters will be with my mother for spring holiday. I do not want them present for the confrontation. 6 weeks works. My attorney is ready. We strike simultaneously. Same day, same hour. Agreed. They built this betrayal together. They can watch it burn together. The 6 weeks of waiting were the hardest part of my life. Every night I lay next to Vanessa, watching her scroll through her phone, knowing she was probably messaging him. Every morning I kissed her goodbye and told her I loved her. Every evening I asked about her day and listened to her stories with a smile. I was living with a stranger, a woman who looked like my wife, sounded like my wife, but was not the person I'd married. That person had never existed. She was a character Vanessa had played for 12 years, and I'd been too blind to see through the performance. 2 weeks before D-Day, she started packing for Vienna. I'm so excited, she said, folding a silk blouse I didn't recognize. This conference is going to be incredible. 3 days of immersive interpretation workshops, including a whole section on diplomatic protocol. Sounds fascinating, babe. It's one of the most prestigious conferences in Europe. I had to apply twice before they accepted me. She pulled out a shopping bag. Victoria's Secret. Got a few new things for the trip. For myself. For him, I knew. Purchased with money from our joint account. Money that was half mine. You'll look beautiful, I said. The night before her flight, she tried to initiate intimacy one more time. Come on, she whispered, pressing her body against mine in bed. I'm leaving tomorrow. I want to remember this. I've got a 6 a.m. call with the London team. Jersey deals in crisis mode. I kissed her forehead. We'll celebrate when you get back. She pulled away, and I saw irritation flash across her face. You've been turning me down a lot lately. Work's been brutal. It's always work with you, Dylan. Always the job, the deals, the acquisitions. She turned away. Sometimes I wonder if you even want me anymore. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. My wife, who had been sleeping with another man for 5 years, was accusing me of not wanting her. I want you, I said. I'm just exhausted. We'll have plenty of time when you're back. She didn't respond. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. I lay awake until dawn, counting down the hours. She flew out on a Tuesday morning. I drove her to the airport, carried her bag to the curb, kissed her goodbye with all the affection of a loving husband. Call me when you land, she said. Always. I watched her disappear into the terminal. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app, the one I'd installed on her device 3 weeks earlier, during a system update I'd offered to help with. The little blue dot moved through security, through the terminal, to the gate. Her ticket said Vienna. The dot moved to a gate for Milan. I called Raymond. She's in the air, Milan bound. I'm already here. I'll have eyes on her the moment she lands. Over the next 4 days, Raymond sent a steady stream of photographs and updates. Vanessa, arriving at a residential building in central Milan. Not a hotel, she was staying at Luca's apartment now. Bolder than before. Vanessa and Luca at a restaurant, holding hands across a candlelit table. Her face was radiant, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Vanessa and Luca kissing in a public plaza, her body pressed against his, oblivious to the passers-by. Vanessa wearing a necklace I'd never seen. Delicate gold chain, small heart pendant, a gift from him. I saved every photo, added them to the master file, forwarded them to Patricia with a single note. Ready when you are. On the 3rd day, Raymond called. Found something new. What? His financial situation is worse than we thought. Business is circling the drain. He's 3 months behind on rent for his office space. He's been asking her for money. A lot. How much? Beyond the $15,000 you documented, I found evidence of another 12, maybe 15,000. Cash transfers, untraceable except through the patterns. Raymond paused. And here's the thing. He's not just spending it on himself. Some of it's going to his wife. Gifts, dinners, family vacations. I closed my eyes. The scope of it was almost beautiful in its perversity. She's been financing her own replacement. In a manner of speaking, yes. Does Julia know? I've sent her the documentation. Her response was... Raymond paused, and I could hear him choosing his words. Let's just say she's not a woman who forgives easily. D-Day was a Thursday. I woke at 5:30 a.m. before my alarm. Worked out, hard, brutal, cathartic. Showered. Ate a breakfast I barely tasted. Put on my best suit, the charcoal Armani I wore for closings and court appearances. I wanted to look good for this. At 8:45 a.m., I sat at my desk with my phone in hand. In Milan, it was 2:45 p.m. I texted Julia. Ready? Her response came within seconds. Ready, my attorney is here. The confrontation begins in 15 minutes. At 8:55 a.m., I called Patricia. It's time, I said. Filing now. I heard keys clicking. Petition for divorce, citing adultery, filed in county court. Evidence packet attached as exhibits. A through J process server is en route to her office. Papers will be waiting when she returns. And the ethics complaint? Drafted and ready. I'll submit it at 9:15. I looked at my watch. 8:59 a.m. Do it. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. in Milan, Patricia filed my divorce petition. At 9:15 a.m., she submitted a formal ethics complaint to Vanessa's employer, documenting 5 years of fraudulent expense reports. At 9:30 a.m., I poured myself a coffee and waited for the world to end. I learned later what happened in Milan. Vanessa and Luca were in bed. His bed, in the apartment he shared with his wife and daughters, when his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and his face went pale. Julia's lawyer, he muttered, and answered in rapid Italian. Vanessa watched him, not understanding the words but understanding the fear. His voice rose. His hands shook. He stood up, pacing, gesturing wildly. Then he ended the call and looked at her with something she'd never seen before. Terror. What is it? She asked. What happened? She knows. Julia knows everything. Her lawyer just told me. She's filing for divorce. Today. Right now. Vanessa felt the first flutter of panic. How? How could she? Her phone buzzed. Then again. Then a third time. The first notification was an email from her company's HR department. Please contact us immediately regarding an urgent compliance matter. The second was from a number she didn't recognize. This is Patricia Lawson, attorney at law, representing Dylan Mercer in the matter of Mercer vs. Mercer. You have been served. The third was a formal notice of divorce proceedings. Vanessa's world collapsed in the space of 30 seconds. She tried to call me. I watched her number flash on my screen, wife, and let it ring out. She called again. I declined. She left a voicemail. Dylan, what the hell is going on? I just got some kind of legal notice and my company is asking about compliance and I don't understand any of this. Call me back, please. I don't know what's happening. I listened to it once, then I deleted it. Meanwhile, in Milan, Giulia Benedetti was executing her own plan. She walked into her living room, where Luca was frantically throwing clothes into a suitcase. Her attorney stood beside her, holding a folder of documents. Sit down, she said. Giulia, please, just let me explain. Sit down. Her voice was ice. 20 years of marriage, and he'd never heard that tone. He sat. Giulia spread the photographs across the coffee table. Luca and Vanessa at the restaurant, kissing in the plaza, entering the apartment building together. I have bank statements, she said. I have hotel records. I have 5 years of lies documented with the precision of a medical chart. You will not speak, you will listen. For the next hour, she laid out everything she knew. The affair, the secret credit card, the money he'd taken from his American mistress to buy gifts for his own wife. The earrings you gave me for my birthday, she said, holding up a velvet box. Paid for by Vanessa Mercer. The necklace for our anniversary, also her money. The family trip to Lake Como, funded by a woman who believed she was your great love. Luca's face crumpled. I never meant… What? You never meant for me to find out? Of course not. That was the entire point. Giulia slid a document across the table. These are my terms. The apartment remains mine. I bought it before our marriage. I retain primary custody of the girls. You receive nothing from my pension, my investments, or my earnings. And if I refuse, then I tell our daughters exactly who their father is. I show them the photographs. I explain how their birthday gifts were financed by another woman. A woman who was destroying our family while buying them presents. Luca signed the papers that night. Vanessa flew back 2 days later. I wasn't at the airport. She came home to an empty house. Her closet was untouched. I hadn't thrown her things out, hadn't made any dramatic gestures. I'd simply stopped being there. I was staying at a hotel downtown, a suite with a view of the river. On our kitchen counter, I'd left a single sheet of paper. All further communication through attorneys. Over the next week, she tried everything. 17 phone calls. I blocked her number. Emails, 34 of them, ranging from angry to pleading to desperate. I forwarded them to Patricia without reading past the subject lines. She showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when security called up. Your wife is here, Mr. Mercer. She's causing a scene in the lobby. She's not my wife. She's my soon-to-be ex-wife. Please escort her out. I could hear her screaming my name through the phone as security removed her. She called Megan. My sister picked up just long enough to say, "You don't deserve to speak his name. Don't call this number again." She called my parents. My mother, who had loved Vanessa like a daughter, who had given us $400,000 for our home, who had welcomed Vanessa into our family with open arms, said simply, "We've seen the evidence. Don't contact us again." The walls were closing in, and there was nowhere left to run. 3 weeks after D-Day, Vanessa was terminated from her company. The investigation had been swift and brutal. 5 years of fraudulent expense reports. Fake conference registrations for events that didn't exist, fabricated receipts, inflated reimbursements, systematic theft. Total embezzlement, $47,320. She was escorted from the building by security, carrying a cardboard box of personal items. Her termination was logged in the HR system as gross misconduct and fraud. No severance, no reference, no eligibility for unemployment benefits. I learned the details later from a mutual acquaintance who still worked at her company. It was brutal, he said, shaking his head. She walked in Monday morning thinking it was a normal day. By noon, she was sitting in a conference room with HR, legal, and two people from corporate compliance. They had everything: 5 years of expense reports, side by side with conference records. She couldn't explain any of it. What did she say? Nothing, mostly. She just sat there. I think she was in shock. By 2 p.m., security was at her desk with a box. She had 15 minutes to pack up her personal items. And after? She tried to talk to a few people on her way out. Nobody would look at her. And in the translation industry, a small world, tightly networked, word spread fast. By the end of the month, 3 major conferences had blacklisted her. Former colleagues stopped returning her calls. A friend from graduate school told her, quietly, that her name had become poison. Nobody wants to be associated with you, the friend said. I'm sorry, Vanessa, but your career is over. I also learned what happened between Vanessa and Luca after D-Day. In the immediate aftermath, they'd tried to lean on each other. She called him constantly, desperate for comfort, for reassurance, for someone who understood what she was going through. He did the same, suddenly alone in Milan, his wife filing for divorce, his children looking at him with confusion and disappointment. But desperation isn't love. And when the crisis hit, when they both needed support instead of being able to provide it, the relationship collapsed. You ruined my life, he told her in one phone call, which Julia's attorney later obtained. If you hadn't been so careless. I was careless? You're the one who used my money to buy gifts for your wife. You told me you loved me, and the whole time you were playing both of us. I did love you. But now look. Julia has taken everything. My home, my children, my reputation, and I have nothing. We have each other, Vanessa said. A long pause. I don't think that's enough anymore, Luca said. They stopped talking after that. The great love affair that had consumed 5 years of both their lives, that had destroyed 2 marriages and countless relationships, ended not with passion but with mutual blame. Julia told me about it in one of her emails. They thought what they had was special, she wrote, but it was only special because it was forbidden. When the secrecy was gone, there was nothing left. Just 2 selfish people who deserved each other. The divorce proceedings began in month 3. Patricia was surgical. Richard Hartman, Vanessa's attorney, never stood a chance. Let me understand your position, Patricia said during our first mediation session, spreading documents across the conference table. Your client committed documented adultery for 5 years. She misused marital funds totaling over $70,000. She committed fraud against her employer, resulting in termination for cause. And you're asking for what? Half the marital assets? Hartman shifted in his chair. My client contributed to the marriage. My client contributed to her lover's failing business, from a joint account, while lying about her whereabouts. Patricia tapped the stack of bank statements. Here are transfers to Luca Benedetti's personal account. Here are hotel receipts from Milan, Barcelona, Rome. Here are text messages planning their meetings. Vanessa sat across from me, and I forced myself to look at her for the first time since discovery. She'd lost weight. Her hair was limp, her face hollow. Dark circles under her eyes. Good. Dylan, she said, her voice cracking. Please. Can we just talk? 5 minutes, just you and me. I need to explain. All communication through attorneys, I said. Please. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is missing an anniversary dinner. I kept my voice flat, emotionless. You chose to betray me for 1,847 days. That's not a mistake, that's a lifestyle. She started crying. Hartman handed her a tissue. I felt nothing. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. 8 months of depositions, document requests, expert testimony, mediation sessions. 8 months of watching Vanessa's position crumble as Patricia dismantled every argument. There were moments that stood out. The deposition where Vanessa had to answer, under oath, about each of the 15 meetings with Luca. Patricia had prepared a timeline, dates, locations, duration of each conference. Vanessa had to confirm each one while her attorney sat beside her, increasingly desperate. And this meeting in Barcelona, Patricia said, her voice calm. Your company records show you attended a translation symposium, but the symposium organizers have no record of your registration. Can you explain that discrepancy? Vanessa looked at her lawyer. Hartman shook his head slightly. I don't recall the specific circumstances, she said. You don't recall attending a 4-day event with your lover instead of the professional conference you told your husband and your employer you were attending. Objection, Hartman said. Characterization. I'll rephrase. Did you attend the translation symposium? A long pause. No. Where were you? Another pause, longer. With Luca. For 4 days? Yes. Patricia made a note. And you submitted expense reports to your employer for this symposium you didn't attend? Vanessa's voice was barely audible. Yes. And your husband was under the impression you were at a professional conference? Yes. There were 23 exchanges like that. 23 moments where Vanessa had to admit, on the record, to specific lies. By the end, she looked hollowed out. I sat across the table from her during those depositions, and I watched the woman I'd married crumble under the weight of her own deceptions. Part of me expected to feel something. Satisfaction, perhaps, or vindication. Instead, I felt only a cold clarity. This was necessary. This was justice. This was the only way to fully cut myself free from the web of lies she'd woven around our lives. Her attorney tried various strategies. He argued that the affair was emotionally driven, as if that made it less of a betrayal. He suggested that my focus on documentation showed obsessive behavior, as if protecting myself was somehow pathological. He even implied once that my work on hostile acquisitions had somehow created distance in our marriage. Patricia destroyed each argument methodically. Mr. Hartman's suggestion that my client's career created distance in the marriage is noted. Perhaps he can explain why his client's response to perceived emotional distance was to commit fraud against her employer while conducting a 5-year affair, rather than, say, suggesting marriage counseling. The judge was not sympathetic to Vanessa's position. The financial forensics were equally damning. My accountant, a man named Gerald Torres, who had the demeanor of a disappointed librarian, presented his findings in a detailed report. Over the course of 5 years, he testified, Mrs. Mercer made transfers totaling $2,700 to an account in Milan, registered to Luca Benedetti. She made purchases on joint accounts totaling $31,600 for items including business class airfare, hotel accommodations, designer clothing, and jewelry, none of which were shared with or disclosed to Mr. Mercer. Additionally, she submitted fraudulent expense reports to her employer totaling $47,312. And the total misuse of marital funds? Patricia asked. $59,000, conservatively. That's money that belonged equally to Mr. Mercer and was spent without his knowledge or consent on the affair. Vanessa sat through this testimony with her hands clasped in her lap, not looking at anyone. The house sold for $1.4 million. Given my parents' documented gift, and my history of majority mortgage payments, I walked away with $1.05 million. Vanessa received $350,000, most of which went immediately to attorney fees and court-ordered reimbursements. My 401k was worth $890,000. In standard proceedings, she would have been entitled to half. But given the documented adultery and misuse of marital funds, the judge awarded her only 20%, $178,000. Alimony was denied entirely. She'd committed adultery and was capable of employment. The fact that she'd destroyed her own career through fraud was, as the judge noted, not the court's concern. The $15,000 she'd sent to Luca was ordered reimbursed, $7,500 to me, as half the marital funds she'd misappropriated. When the final papers were signed, Vanessa Mercer walked away with approximately $180,000. After attorney fees and settlements, she had maybe $160,000 left. No job, no references, no reputation, no marriage. She was 37 years old, living in a studio apartment starting over from nothing. I was 38, newly promoted to partner at my firm, moving into a downtown penthouse with a view of the entire city. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Tom Bradley at a bar downtown. Tom was an old acquaintance. We'd played golf together during my marriage, double-dated a few times. He'd been friends with both me and Vanessa, which made things awkward. Since the divorce, he'd been studiously avoiding me, probably unsure whose side he was supposed to be on. Dylan. He looked uncomfortable, the way people always did now. Hey man, how are you doing? Good, really good. I signaled the bartender. Bourbon, neat. Tom ordered a beer and sat beside me, clearly wrestling with something. We made small talk for a few minutes. Sports, the economy, mutual acquaintances. I could tell he wanted to say something but didn't know how to bring it up. Finally, he just said it. Look, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I saw Vanessa last week. Oh? She's, He cleared his throat. She's bartending now. That place on 4th Street, the one with the exposed brick. Couldn't get work in translation anymore. I heard. She looks different, tired, older. He took a long drink of his beer. We talked for a few minutes. She asked about you. What did you tell her? That you're doing well. New apartment, partner track at the firm, seeing someone. He shrugged. She got quiet after that. I nodded, unsurprised. Can I ask you something? Tom said. Sure. Do you ever wonder if you went too far? I mean, you destroyed her. Her career, her finances, her reputation. Everything's gone. Some people have been saying... He trailed off, uncomfortable. What have people been saying? That maybe the punishment didn't fit the crime. That she made a mistake, sure, but did she deserve to lose everything? I set down my bourbon and turned to face him fully. Tom, do you know what it's like to discover that your entire marriage was a lie? That the person you loved, the person you built a life with, was performing for you the whole time? He didn't answer. I trusted her completely. For 12 years, I trusted her. And the whole time she was betraying me, stealing from me, laughing at me behind my back. I finished my drink. I don't feel bad. I feel like someone who finally woke up. But she wasn't making a mistake, Tom. She made a choice. Over and over, for 5 years, she chose to lie to me. She chose to steal from me. She chose to risk my health. Do you have any idea how many times I could have been exposed to something because she was sleeping with another man? She made those choices every single day, and now she's living with the consequences. Tom didn't know what to say. We talked about other things, sports, work, mutual friends. When I left, he shook my hand and said we should get together sometime. We both knew we wouldn't. 1 year after the divorce, I received an email from an address I recognized immediately. Mr. Mercer. I wanted you to know, Luca's business closed last month. He works now as a freelance translator. Basic work, low rates. He lives in a small apartment on the outskirts of Milan. My daughters are in therapy, but healing. They do not hate their father. I have made sure of that. But they no longer see him the same way. They understand now that the man they thought they knew was an illusion. I have been promoted at the hospital. My work continues to matter. Life continues. Thank you for reaching out when you did. You did not have to think of a stranger across an ocean. Many would have focused only on their own pain. I hope you have found peace. Julia. I replied that evening. Dr. Benedetti. Thank you for the update. I'm glad to hear your daughters are recovering and congratulations on your promotion. I've thought often about our coordination. There's something fitting about how it ended. The two of them, who built their betrayal together, watching it collapse from opposite sides of the world. They thought their love was something special, something that transcended ordinary rules. In the end, it was just selfishness wearing a romantic disguise. I'm seeing someone now. Nothing serious yet, but it's a start. I've learned to be more careful, to look for warning signs I missed before. My therapist says I'm making progress. I have found peace. I hope you have as well. Dylan. My therapist, Dr. Rebecca Solomon, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and an unnervingly direct gaze, had been an unexpected lifeline. You're processing this remarkably well, she told me during one of our early sessions. Most people in your situation are drowning in grief, rage, self-doubt. You seem functional, compartmentalized. You've put the pain in a box and set it aside so you can focus on the practical matters. That's effective in the short term, but eventually you'll have to open that box. And if I don't? Then it opens itself, usually at the worst possible moment. She was right. 6 months after the divorce, I had a breakdown in my office. Sudden, overwhelming, completely unexpected. One minute I was reviewing a contract, the next, I was sitting on the floor with my back against the wall, sobbing. It passed. I cleaned up, went back to work, finished the contract. But I started taking Dr. Solomon's sessions more seriously after that. The betrayal isn't really about her, she told me once. I mean, it is. She's the one who chose to hurt you. But what you're really grieving is the loss of who you thought you were. The trusting husband, the man with the perfect marriage. That identity is gone now, and you have to build a new one. What if I don't know who that new person is? Then you figure it out. That's what the next part of your life is for. 18 months after discovery, I came home from work to find a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Dylan. I know you'll never forgive me. I'm not asking you to. I'm writing because I finally understand what I did. Not just the affair, all of it. The lies, the manipulation, the way I treated you like you were disposable, like our marriage was just a safety net while I lived my real life somewhere else. I told myself stories to justify it, that you worked too much, that our marriage was boring, that I deserved passion and excitement. But those were lies I told myself because the truth was too ugly. I was selfish. I wanted everything, and I didn't care who I hurt to get it. You handled this with more dignity than I ever deserved. You could have destroyed me publicly, dragged my name through the mud, made sure everyone knew the details. Instead, you were surgical, precise, almost merciful in a way. I'm not the same person I was. Therapy, time, hitting rock bottom, they change you. I'm not asking for forgiveness and I'm not asking for another chance. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. What I did. What I lost. Who I hurt. I won't contact you again. V. I read the letter twice. Then I walked to my fireplace, dropped it into the flames, and watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. I poured myself a whiskey, sat by the window, looked out at the city lights spreading to the horizon. I didn't feel closure. I didn't feel vindication. I felt like a man who had walked through fire and come out the other side. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, the architect I'd been seeing for 3 months. Dinner tomorrow? Found this new place downtown. Supposed to be amazing. I typed back, sounds perfect. I'll pick you up at 7. I finished my whiskey and went to bed. Tomorrow was a new day, and for the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to it.